So there is a concept that's been trending. It is time to talk about it. It is February. It is the month of love. And there's a reoccurring theme that just keeps coming up. It's a beautiful topic as we talk about spiritual awakening and moving forward. And that is the divine feminine. What is the divine feminine? We hear these terms all the time. Divine Shanti. We hear Shanti rising. Ida and Pingala and Sushumna. We hear all of these different terms. And I also hear it more in like the spiritual community, in like the life coaching community, where we also have the concept of where we're using our divine feminine energy in how we date these days, or we're using it to enhance our relationships or improve our relationships. So we step more into our divine feminine or our divine masculine. I'll tell you what, that's all great and all, but I feel like it can often get really, really bogged down and turn into a lot of gobbledygook. We're kind of left with this like confusing perception of like, but what the heck does that even mean? What does it mean to be in my divine feminine? What does it mean when I'm not in my divine feminine? Am I being too in my divine masculine? Is that affecting my relationship? Am I focusing more on divine feminine than divine masculine? How do I understand the whole thing about balance? It's very confusing. So let's break it down. So we were talking about divine feminine energy. So before we get started, if you don't know me, I am Ashley from theawakenstate.net. If you're new here, thank you for tuning in and watching. And if you're back and you're tuning into our weekly videos, thank you so much for enjoying this time with me. And if you have any questions at all, I love to hear from my audience. Please don't be afraid to reach out, drop a comment, let me know your own intuitive insights, what you're working on, and so forth. Here's the thing. When it comes to divine feminine energy, we are playing with a different force of nature than a lot of our society is built on. And I think if we just kind of step back here, go a little bit back, you know, when it comes to understanding spiritual awakening is often about the rising of feminine energy. This conversation gets lost in translation a lot because it's like, okay, what is divine feminine? What does that even mean? Like, what? When it comes to really understanding how Kundalini works, the ancient teaching has always been about there is Ida and Pingala and Sushumna. Sushumna is our rising channel. And then we have Ida and Pingala as divine feminine and divine masculine. Concept translates to Shiva and Shanti, Ida and Pingala, divine feminine and masculine. We're all talking about the same thing here. When you say Shanti rising, we're talking about divine feminine. When we talk about playing with Shiva energy, we're talking about divine masculine, and so forth. So they're all about the same thing. But when it comes to understanding Kundalini is about balancing out our masculine and feminine energy in order to step into our true spiritual alignment. All about stepping into our natural spiritual alignment is about learning how to balance our masculine and our feminine energy. When it comes to understanding the divine feminine energy, this is wildly different than a lot of how we run and operate in our society, especially if in the United States, for example, we promote a lot of hustle culture, almost wounded masculine aspects where we are striving and hustling and really forcing things to come into fruition, going into a place where we're celebrating our burnout, we're celebrating workaholism, we're celebrating, our achievements are only due to cause and effect because of effort and so forth. Many of us have a wounded feminine because we have all been indoctrinated into thinking from the level of almost a very masculine world and we're not talking about gender here, okay? Let's preface this, like, we're not talking about gender, we're talking about energy currents. It's more like an energy current of how, like an archetype of how you're seeing reality. From this place of where we've been indoctrinated into this very like masculine view of the world, a lot of us might not be in harmony with our feminine energy. We're more the striving and being in this place of where burnout is celebrated. And if you're not putting forth a ton of effort and really pushing the grain, then you're lazy, you're bad, you're wrong, you're a hobo, you're, and so forth. So it's like this concept of like, if you're not doing shit 24/7, you're wrong. And this concept of leaning back, surrendering, letting go, detaching is not celebrated. And instead, it's seen as something that's kind of a joke. It's seen as something that, you're lazy. You're not a good person if you do that. Why aren't you putting forth more effort? And here's the thing. It's like, I feel like there's a level of like discernment when it comes to understanding divine feminine. Divine feminine energy is not, I'm going to wait on the couch for Oprah to call. I'm going to wait on the couch and do absolutely nothing with my life. I'm just going to sit back and like surrender it all to the universe. That's not what we're talking about. That's a cop-out. But divine feminine energy is very soft. It's about the state of receptive allowance. And ultimately, it's about the space of the receiving mode. When it comes to understanding the divine feminine, it's about looking at life from the lens of, if you grew up suppressing your intuition, you are not tapped into your divine feminine current, which is very intuitive and receptive. So it's kind of like, if you were to just imagine here that like, when it comes to looking at how energy works, we have receptive energy and then we have active energy. Active energy is when you're putting forth a bunch of effort. You're taking the actions you need to take. You're pushing yourself forward. You're showing up to film the videos. You're reading the books. You're taking the courses. You're doing the actions. You're doing your homework. And then on the other spectrum, we have receptive energy, which is listening instead of talking. It's flowing instead of forcing. It's being in a place where you're allowing instead of pushing. And this energy is kind of more laid back. It's, I'm going to sit on the couch, but I'm not going to freak out about staying there. I'm just going to relax, lean back. I'm just going to lean back. And when I'm in this like energy of leaning back, I'm allowing. And I'm in this space of, there's this saying, it's let go and let God. So I always like to say it's let go and let it flow. Let go and let it flow, because that's the state of the divine feminine. That's your mantra to go with into the divine feminine. The divine feminine energy is about surrender, allowing yourself to trust yourself, allowing yourself to listen to the messages as they come up, allowing yourself to realize that the next conversation was spiritual guidance and you just didn't realize it until that moment because you were pushing forward, you were going too fast, you were hustling, you were rushing, you were going too fast. And this energy of where you're actually not doing that. So it's like the opposite. It's like the opposite of rushing and pushing and striving and forcing. And it's this energy of you are no longer the giver. And this energy is different than what we are taught in society, right? We're taught that the female should be the giver. We're often taught that we're supposed to be the giver. But if you are always giving and you are always giving and you're in this place of over giving, you're actually overly in the masculine energy. Crazy, because if you think about it, the feminine energy is receiving. The feminine energy is the equivalent of your sacral chakra is in balance and you're allowing that creative, almost sensual, sexual energy of receiving. So you're in this space of literally stepping back into the space of receptive allowance is how I would describe the feminine energy. When you are in this space, you have to realize that it's not about doing things. And when you are in the divine feminine energy, it's like you have softened your nervous system to be in a space of doing where you are just allowing life. You're literally just living your life. And this is actually the best place to manifest, because when you're in this space of the divine feminine, you're kind of listening to your intuition more easily. You're starting to understand the receptive messages that are coming forth. You're starting to listen to your intuition and what's channeling, and you're starting to look at the signs and symbols and the repeated messages that are showing up, and why you're experiencing deja vu is like it's starting to all start to make sense because you're in the divine feminine. Because when you are in the space of receiving, it's like you have allowed. You have fully allowed. You can enter the place of the exhale where you are not pushing. You're not worried. Your hands are not in fists anymore trying to clench through because you have allowed. You have opened your hands and allowed. You cannot receive water unless you cup your hands and allow the water to come. It's kind of like when you receive a gift. You're not going to force your friend to pick out the gift for you. You just receive the gift. When we come at our divine feminine from this place of pushing ourselves forward, we're actually in a place of masculine energy. For example, when it comes to spiritual guidance, if we're trying to frantically search for information, this is not spiritual guidance. This is you're trying to push that information. It's just like I was saying in one of my other videos, it's like when I have writer's block, it's like the last thing I should be doing is trying to force myself to come up with ideas, is because that's not how it works. That is not how it works. You have to detach and allow and be in this divine feminine energy that's soft and allowing, this place of receptive awareness. Finally, one of the hugest things when it comes to understanding divine feminine is you are in a state of receiving, and often one of the gifts of the divine feminine space is the flow state. The flow state of stream of consciousness, automatic writing, intuitive channeling, where you get into that place where you are just in a series of actions, but you are so overcome by everything that's around you that you are just you're single focused on the task at hand. You're entering that place of quantum intelligence where you can receive the receptive guidance. You're starting to be in the flow and the channel of spirit. And it's like you have entered this space in your mind where you are actually more aligned because you're connected to the quantum. You're feeling that energy. You're in the flow state. So you're kind of in the flow zone and you're in this place of receptive awareness, but it's almost like you're also incredibly present. So when you are in the divine feminine, you can be incredibly present and in that space of beingness because your energy is intuitive. It's aligned. It's in flow. It's in harmony. It's in harmonic resonance with what you desire. And because of that harmonic resonance, it's easier to manifest. It's easier to heal. It's easier to hear the messages. It's easier to hear intuition. It's easier to trust yourself because in the divine feminine, you're allowing, you're detaching, you're in the law of detachment. You're focusing in on those messages. The easiest way to really hone in on grasping the divine feminine is to not just see it as soft or this place where you can just be lazy or just completely detach and let the universe do everything. That's not what we're talking about. It's the place where you are listening. It's the place where you are listening instead of talking. It's the space where you are receiving instead of giving. It's the space where you are in your own natural flow and you're flowing with life. You're present-minded. You're flowing. You're in this place of allowing, surrendering, releasing, letting go, detaching, not forcing. And in this place, this is where the guidance really comes. This is where the answers and the solutions and the healing starts to unveil itself. And that's what the divine feminine is truly like. So it is no wonder that we are at a point in history, at a point in time, we are wanting that evolution of consciousness to balance our feminine and our masculine energy so that we can hear our intuition louder, so that we can take more intuitive guidance and action, so we can tap into aligned action from a place of receptive allowance. And this space is ultimately what it means to be in that evolution of consciousness that we are currently experiencing, because this is what it means. This is what it's all about. It's about stepping into balancing out that masculine and feminine energy. So I would love to know if you have any questions at all when it comes to divine feminine. And next week, I'm going to be talking about the divine masculine. So if you have any questions at all about this topic, please feel free to reach out, drop a comment, and most of all, hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. And I'll see you guys next time.